There's 10 mobs and you have 60 seconds for each one to try and guess the mob based on the hints I give. Good luck! Mob number 1. This mob is immune to fall damage. Most mobs take damage when they fall more than a few blocks, but this mob will take no damage no matter how far they fall. Hint number 2. This mob is passive. Some mobs, like zombies, will attack the player, and other mobs, like this one, are harmless. But even though this mob is passive, it cannot spawn when the difficulty is set to peaceful. Hint number 3. This mob can sprint. Most mobs move at a certain speed and cannot go any faster, but this mob can sprint to move faster if the player is nearby. Hint number 4. This mob spawns in the jungle. Different mobs spawn in different biomes, and this one will only spawn on grass blocks in the jungle. Hint number 5. This mob attacks baby turtles. Some mobs will attack other mobs, like how zombies will attack villagers, endermen will attack endermites, and this mob will attack baby turtles. Final hint. This mob scares away creepers. If creepers get too close to this mob, they will turn and run away, which means it could be a good idea to keep a few of these mobs by your base. The mob was the ocelot. Mob number 2. This mob is hostile. Some mobs are passive, meaning they won't hurt the player, and some mobs, like this one, are hostile, which means they will attack the player. Hint number 2. This mob does not take fire damage. Most mobs will take damage if they touch fire or lava, but a few mobs, including this one, are immune. Hint number 3. This mob can spawn even when the difficulty is set to peaceful. Most hostile mobs will despawn if the difficulty is peaceful, but this mob will stay, except it will stop attacking the player. Hint number 4. The player will receive a status effect when hit by this mob. Most mobs just hurt you when they attack, but some mobs will give the player a status effect in addition to the damage. Hint number 5. This mob will not take any knockback when hit. Most mobs will be knocked back when they are hit, but some mobs, like this one, will not move at all. Final hint. This mob can teleport. Most mobs cannot teleport, so they have to walk or run to move around, but this mob is able to teleport, which is actually the only way it can move on its own. The mob was the shulker. Mob number 3. This mob is neutral. Passive mobs never hurt the player, hostile mobs will always attack the player, and neutral mobs, like this one, will not attack the player unless they are bothered. Hint number 2. This mob has a baby variant. Some mobs in the game have baby variants, but this one is different because the adults cannot breed, which means the babies need to spawn naturally to exist. Hint number 3. This mob can swim as fast as the player. Most mobs are slower than the player in the water, but when this mob is angry, it's able to keep up with the player while swimming. Hint number 4. This mob is immune to freezing from powder snow. Most mobs will freeze and take damage when they stand in powder snow for too long, but this mob is immune to the damage. Hint number 5. This mob attacks foxes. Some mobs attack other mobs, like how wolves will attack sheep, and this mob will attack foxes. Final hint. This mob spawns in certain snowy biomes. Different mobs spawn in different biomes, and this one is found in some biomes where it snows, and if more than one of these mobs spawn at the same time, the second one will be a baby. The mob was the polar bear. Mob number 4. This mob spawns from a block. Most mobs will spawn naturally if the player is nearby, but this mob will only spawn if a certain block is in the world. Hint number 2. This mob is passive. Some mobs, like the zombie, will attack the player all the time, and other mobs, like this one, will never attack the player. Hint number 3. This mob is aquatic. Most mobs can be found on land, but a few mobs are only found in the water. If this mob is on land, it will flop around and try to get back to the water, and it will die if it is out of the water for too long. Hint number 4. This mob can be picked up in a bucket. The bucket can only be used to pick up a few mobs, and this mob is one of them. Hint number 5. This mob is lured by slime balls. Different mobs can be lured by different items, like how sheep are lured by wheat, pigs are lured by potatoes, and this mob is lured by slime balls. Final hint. This mob is a baby. Many mobs have baby variants, like how zombies have baby zombies, but this mob is different because when it grows up, it turns into a different mob. The mob was the tadpole. If you're enjoying the video, remember to hit the subscribe button. Mob number 5. This mob can breathe underwater. Most mobs will drown if they are underwater for too long, but a few mobs, including this one, can stay underwater for as long as they want. Hint number 2. This mob has a baby variant. Most mobs have baby variants, but this mob is different because the baby cannot be obtained in survival. This mob cannot breed, and the baby doesn't spawn naturally, so it can only be obtained in creative mode. Hint number 3. This mob can be used and a menu will open up. This is similar to how you can use a crafting table and the crafting menu will open up, but this mob only has a menu in Java Edition, not Bedrock. Hint number 4. This mob is a variant of another mob. Some mobs are variants, like how the husk is a variant of the zombie, and this mob is a variant of another mob. Hint number 5. This mob can be ridden. Some mobs can be ridden by the player to move around. This mob can be controlled when a saddle is put on it in Java Edition, but no saddle is needed in Bedrock Edition. Final hint. This mob is passive, which means it will never hurt the player, but when this mob is first encountered, it is being ridden by a hostile mob. The mob was the skeleton horse. Mob number 6. This mob is neutral. neutral. Sometimes this mob is friendly and won't attack the player, and sometimes this mob is hostile and will attack the player. Hint number 2. This mob can spawn with status effects. Most mobs can be inflicted by status effects when a potion is thrown on them, but this mob has a chance to naturally spawn with status effects. Hint number 3. This mob is scared of armadillos. Some mobs are scared of other mobs, like how creepers are scared of cats, and this mob is scared of armadillos, so it will run away if it gets too close. Hint number 4. This mob can spawn from monster spawners. Different mobs will spawn from different monster spawners, like how blazes will spawn from spawners in the Nether Fortress, and this mob can spawn from some spawners in the overworld. Hint number 5. This mob can spawn with another mob riding it. Some mobs can be ridden by other mobs, like how baby zombies can ride chickens, and this mob can also be ridden by another mob. Final hint. This mob can climb walls. Most mobs cannot climb walls, so they need to find a way around to get past, but this mob can just climb over the wall. The mob was the spider. Mob number 7. This mob sinks in water. Some mobs, like the pig, will float if it is in water, but other mobs, like skeletons, zombies, and this mob, will sink to the bottom. Hint number 2. Looting doesn't work on this mob in Bedrock Edition. This mob will drop up to 5 of an item without looting, and will drop up to 8 of an item when looting is used in Java Edition, but will still only drop a maximum of 5 if looting is used in Bedrock Edition. Hint number 3. This mob is passive. Some mobs, like the zombie, will always try to hurt the player, and other mobs, like this one, are friendly and will never hurt the player. Hint number 4. This mob can be ridden. Some mobs, like the pig, can be ridden by the player when a saddle is put on it, but unlike the pig, this mob can also spawn with another mob riding it. Hint number 5. This mob's name is part of an enchantment's name. There are many different enchantments in the game, and there's one enchantment that contains the name of this mob. Final hint. This mob spawns in the Nether. Different mobs spawn in different dimensions, and this mob can only spawn naturally in the Nether, but it can be found in every biome in the Nether. The mob was the Strider. Mob number 8. This mob is immune to fall damage. Most mobs take damage when they fall from a tall height, but this mob will never take fall damage no matter how far it falls. Hint number 2. This mob is passive, which means it will never hurt the player. While this mob is friendly towards the player, it will still go after and attack most mobs in the game. Hint number 3. This mob takes damage when it touches water. Most mobs are fine when they are in water, and some mobs can even breathe in it, but a few mobs, like this one, will take damage if it touches water, including when it rains. Hint number 4. This mob is immune to the damage from powder snow. Most mobs will take damage if they are in powder snow for too long, but this mob will not take any damage. Hint number 5. This mob can be sheared. Shears are mainly used to get wool from sheep, but they can be used on a few other mobs, including this one. Using shears on this mob will make it look different. Final hint. This mob takes damage if it's in the Nether. This is because the Nether is too hot, so this mob can survive if a fire resistance potion is splashed on it. The mob was the Snow Golem. Mob number 9. This mob is a variant of another mob. A few mobs in the game are variants. Glow squids are variants of regular squids, and this mob is a variant of another mob. Hint number 2. This mob is hostile, which means it will always attack the player. Some mobs are passive, which means they will never attack the player, and other mobs, like this one, are hostile. Hint number 3. This mob despawns when the difficulty is set to peaceful on Java Edition, but not on Bedrock Edition. Most hostile mobs despawn when the difficulty is peaceful, which is true for this mob on Java Edition, but on Bedrock Edition, this mob becomes passive. Hint number 4. This mob spawns in the Nether. Different mobs spawn in different dimensions, and this mob is only found naturally in the Nether. Hint number 5. This mob attacks wither skeletons. Some mobs will attack other mobs, like how zombies will attack villagers, and this mob will attack wither skeletons. Final hint. This mob will turn into a different mob if it is outside of the Nether for too long. Most mobs can exist in every dimension, but this mob will turn into a different mob if it is not in the Nether. The mob was the Piglin Brute. Final mob. This mob can wear armor. Similar to how players can wear armor to protect against damage, some mobs, like zombies, horses, and this mob, can also wear armor. Hint number 2. This mob runs away from llamas. Some mobs are scared of other mobs and will run away, like how creepers are scared of cats, and this mob is scared of llamas. Hint number 3. This mob has variants. Some mobs have variants, like how husks are variants of zombies, and this mob has multiple variants, which all look different from each other, but are still the same mob. Hint number 4. Foxes run away from this mob. While this mob is scared of llamas and will run away, this mob also scares foxes, which causes them to run away. Hint number 5. This mob can teleport. Most mobs cannot teleport, but some can. This mob can only teleport in certain situations and will usually walk or run to move around. Final hint. Dye can be used on this mob. Dye is usually used on sheep to change the color of their wool, but it can also be used on this mob, which will change part of its texture. The mob was the wolf. That was all the mobs. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed. See ya!